Welcome to Dog on the Plot. I'm Kerry, this is Dory, and this is what we're going to be sowing in May. So it's only been a week since we were in the home garden trying to tidy up for the season ahead. And then there was rain, and then there was sunshine, and now there's just a garden that's absolutely burst into life. I wish you could smell this lilac, it's absolutely incredible. And the wonderful thing about May is we've got these long, light days and hopefully warm days. So my last frost date is beginning of May, but looking at the forecast, I think we're fine. I think I'm safe. And that's going to make a huge difference because it means I can direct sow into the ground now. And I've still got a greenhouse that is full of seedlings. My living room is still full of seedlings. So to be able to direct sow is going to be, a real game changer at this point. And of course I can start putting things out as well, which makes room for more things that I can sow. And I've got 8 seeds that you can sow in May along with me if you want to. I've also got a pretty special bonus at the end, so please do stick around for that one. But let's get straight on with our first seed for May. So I'm starting by the garlic bed. Now I'm not sowing any more garlic cloves. Indeed, I did some quite late and they have come up fantastically. These were the ones that I did in December, I believe. So I'm okay for regular garlic and elephant garlic. But what I sowed in March, I think it was this perennial garlic called Society Garlic. You might remember me mentioning it. It's often grown as an ornamental, but it is a perennial edible garlic. None of that germinated. And I think this is my number one for growing in May. It's not necessarily Society Garlic, but things that you might have that didn't germinate or did germinate but since perished because of maybe damping off, or I've noticed the slugs are out and they've took a couple of my cosmos. So whatever the reason, it might be something that you were really looking forward to, but then for whatever reason you haven't got. So my number one to start with May is to sow something that you were looking forward to but didn't quite get there. Give it another go. Now my second seed for May is a bit of a cheat. I always have a bit of a cheat, but actually this isn't too bad because it's another broad category one, and it's to sow something unusual. Sow something weird that you've never grown before. Take a chance. It's May, it's warm, just give it a go. So I'm going for 2 seeds actually, and they're both from the same company as the Society Garlic, and they specialize in unusual vegetables and edibles, perennials. So the 2 that I have got are Hungarian licorice. I've never grown licorice before. You might remember that on the plot I'm growing marshmallow. So Nick from That British Homestead gave me a root of marshmallow. I've actually got seed for marshmallow as well, but I shan't sow that because I've got some. Instead, I'm going to do the licorice, and you grow licorice, of course, like marshmallow, for the root, and it's very sweet, and you can presumably make licorice out of it, but also like teas, and you can use it for herbal remedies. So I'm going to give the licorice a go. Now, there's only 10 seeds in there, but what Valley Race Exotics don't give you in perhaps number of seeds, they do give you bonus packets of seeds in your order, and I got a bonus of finger millet. Now, you know I love amaranth, and I've also got quinoa, I think from the same company as well. These are all in the same sort of, well, I don't think they're the same family, but kind of ballpark in that you're growing them for the grain, and you would boil it up and eat that as you would rice, or as a substitute for rice. Now, I love millet. I buy millet anyway. It's one of my favorite things to have as that kind of rice substitute. So I'm really looking forward to seeing if I can grow it. But yeah, grow something that you've never grown before. See what happens. So as well as resowing things that perhaps didn't go right the first time around, May is also the time to start thinking about successional sowing. So things that perhaps did go right the first time around, but you want to have a continual harvest through the season, which means you need to keep sowing them. So things, the obvious ones like spring onions or beetroot. So I've got new sowings of those going right now, but there are also things that are the same plant, but they have different varieties that mature at different times of the year. So cabbages are the obvious one for this. You have spring, summer, winter cabbages, and you have to match your variety to that harvest time and then figure out when to sow them. I find cabbages quite tricky, but they're not the only vegetable that has different varieties that harvest at different times. So I've teased for long enough. The vegetable that I'm talking about is leeks. Now I've already sown leeks, I've got them on the go, but this is a different variety. This is called Mercurian, and this is a variety that you sow now from May into June and July. You can do them, and they will be harvested much later than the ones that I've already got going. So these will actually probably be harvesting next year in the winter. Now they're a strong growing upright variety. They look pretty fantastic. So yeah, I've got high hopes for this variety. And it's nice to think that if the leeks that I've already got fail for whatever reason, I'll be having a backup later in the year. My apologies for bringing you in from the sunshine into the relative gloom of the home office, but I brought you to my chitting window. We've still got the main crop potatoes on here, the King Edward. They're chitting nicely. They're destined for buckets very soon, but that's not the one I want to talk about. Also, the one I don't want to talk about right now, but we'll show you anyway, is the Mashua. I was going to pot these up, if you remember, but I decided instead to put them on here and see if they would chit. Nothing has happened on them yet, although I read that they would chit. I think at this point I'm probably going to give up on the chitting, and I'm going to do with these what I'm going to do with the one that I actually do want to talk about, which is the ocker. So I think the ocker has been on this windowsill chitting for about a month now, and actually I should probably say that I stored these in the house over winter. It got a little bit warm. When I opened the box that they were being stored in, there were absolutely enormous chits on them, and I was like, whoops. So I rubbed them off, then panicked, Googled, you can rub them off like you can with potatoes. If you get enormous chits on potatoes, you can rub them off and they will re-chit. So the ocker have, and to my relief, and actually they're just getting little leaves on there too. So they're quite ready to go out into the garden. Now, whether you've chitted or not, what you can do is pot these up. So you can put each tuber into individual pots, let them grow into little plants, and then plant them out like that when you're over any risk of frost. And I've done that one year and absolutely fine. But what I found actually is, because my frost date is fairly early, at the very beginning of May, there's no need to have that intermediary step. And why would I when I've got a real issue with space? So my ocker, once it's chitted, gets planted directly out, and I'll probably do that in maybe a couple of weeks. I'm going to need to find the spaces that I want to put them in. I think I'll probably do a few in the home garden where I've grown them previously, but also this year do a few on the plot to see how they fare in the soil there. Now the ocker is a gorgeous plant in itself, even if you weren't a fan of the tubers, which taste like lemony potatoes. And I think they're delicious. I really like them. But you could grow them just as an ornamental, because the foliage is fabulous, and actually is also edible, although not in great quantities because it is an oxalis. But yeah, I've got quite a lot of ocker this year, which I'm incredibly excited about, because I want to keep increasing my stock of what is a quite unusual, but I think quite special vegetable. So just before we head down to the allotment for the seeds that I'm going to direct sow on the plot, I thought I would pause in the front garden with the Tortondine kale, which you know I love and I've been propagating from. It's a perennial, it keeps on going, it recovered from the absolutely mothering by caterpillars, so it's incredibly hardy. And well, I want more. I want different varieties of perennial kale. So I've got a couple that I'm going to try to grow from seed. One is cottager's kale. Now, do you know if that is actually Tortondine kale? Because I think I've heard that before. I certainly don't want to be growing something from seed when I've already got masses of the same variety. So let me know if cottager's kale is different to Tortondine kale. But the other one I've got that is different is the Jersey kale walking stick. I'm very excited about that one. And so both of these I'm going to sow in pots, and then hopefully be potting on and planting out for even more perennial kale. Now, when we were doing the February, I believe it was, seed sowing video, I had fennel on my list, Florence fennel. And it was a bit of a surprise because actually in the video, I think you can see it, I look at the back of the packet and think, oh, this says May. So in the end, I didn't sow the Florence fennel in February, and I have saved it till May. And I'm going to, I think, direct sow onto the plot. And I've grown Florence fennel in the past. I've had some success, not so much last year. I think they got eaten by slugs. But my hope is the slug pressure is not nearly so bad on the plot this year, on the new plot this year. So May, Florence fennel, not February. Another vegetable that I'm going to be direct sowing onto the plot this year is swede. It's a bit of a similar story to the fennel. I've had some successes, mostly not really. And I think one of the problems, Danny at the Grow Up channel told me that if it starts to get leggy and you transplant it out, it's never going to bulb up, and I do tend to let my plants go a little bit leggy. So I thought if I direct sow, and it does say to direct sow on the packet anyway, if I direct sow, I'm going to have less chance of that. And I've already been direct sowing on the plot, actually. Let me just show you these couple of things. So just over a week ago, I did some direct sowing onto the plot, some of my March sowings onto the plot, and they have popped up so quickly with that wet and now warm weather. So these are only tiny, but what they are turnips. So these will need thinning, but I've got 2 rows there, and they are turnip purple top, Milan purple top, and turnip Tokyo cross. And then over here, I sowed a couple of rows. Oh, I also put some peas in direct. They haven't come up yet, but oh, there they are. I did put in some radish. So I think these are just a mixed pack, but look how quickly they've come up. I think that's probably 8, maybe 9 days. The field beans are really putting on some size now. I also put out some of the purple frills mustard, although it's very quickly going to flower, which is a shame. And oh, there's the marshmallow that I was mentioning earlier. And look at all that growth on it. It's obviously liking being in the ground there. Anyway, back to our seeds for May. And actually, this is interesting in terms of direct sowing. Interesting and very unexpected, actually. So I'm going to come over to the Fruit Tree Guild. Now, you might remember, not that long ago, maybe a month, it was when I was doing the Fruit Tree Guild and moving all the strawberries in and things like that. I found a packet of hollyhock seed that was in the shed and had been there all winter. And I decided to just empty the packet along this row at the back. And I gave it a good water, but yeah, that wouldn't be the most viable of seed, you would have thought. It wasn't the right time to be sowing them into the ground. And I, had very little expectation that anything would come up. Today, I noticed I have a lot of hollyhocks growing in the Fruit Tree Guild, which I'm really quite happy about. I think the benefit of this is that I could end up with a lovely long row of hollyhock and it could look fantastic, but also I can oik them out and plant them elsewhere and maybe take them into the home garden and things like that. You know how much I love hollyhock. Now, I had hollyhock on my list to sow for May, but now it's seeming like I don't really need to do that. But there is one variety of hollyhock I am still going to sow, and it's this one, hollyhock black. So I might have loads of hollyhock there, but I'm going to still sow this because it's black, and I think that's just going to be fantastic. Now you can see the packet is open. I did give these a go last year, and these are biennials, so the ones that I sowed last year will hopefully flower this year. But I say hopefully because I tend to find that anything I overwinter gets a little bit neglected and doesn't look that great by the time it's ready to sow in the spring. Now, usually I sow my biennials a little bit late because I don't tend to start thinking about them when everything else is being sown at this busy period in spring. So they kind of get left. I don't do them till sort of August, maybe July, August time. Then they're still quite small plants and you can't put them out, so they have to overwinter. They get neglected. They go out in the spring, hopefully. Not my foxgloves, which is the other thing that I'm going to be sowing in May. Those all died. They were doing really well over the winter, growing lovely. And then as soon as the sun came out, I'd forgotten they were there and they all dried out and died. So I'm thinking by doing them a little bit earlier this year, they'll grow a little bit bigger, and then by autumn I can actually put them out into the ground. They'll be sturdy enough plants, they'll get the chance over winter to put their roots down into the actual spot where I want them to flower, and then I might actually also get earlier flowers in the year. That's my theory. So hollyhocks and foxgloves or the biennials, start those in May. So I think that's my 8th seed for May, but we always have a bonus. Now today we started in the home garden, we've been in the greenhouse, we went upstairs to the jutting shelf, we went into the front garden to have a look at the kale, and now we're on the plot. It's absolutely glorious. But where should we go so that I can present to you the bonus seed for this month? This month's bonus seed is coming all the way from Antalya in Turkey, and it's this, the bird of paradise. Now the sun has just come up here in Turkey. I was up early out on the pier watching the sun come up over the mountains. It's beautiful weather here. The bird of paradise is obviously enjoying it a lot. Now obviously I don't have these conditions in the UK, so how am I supposed to grow a bird of paradise in our UK climate? Now the seed itself is actually from the UK. I've not purchased it in Turkey. It's a gift from my friend Helen, who went to the Eden Project, and she bought me some seed from there. Now clearly at the Eden Project they can recreate these kinds of tropical conditions. They've got those big domes that they grow the plants under. I do not have one of those on the allotment yet, but I do have my greenhouse, and typically in the UK, the bird of paradise is sold as a houseplant. So in the winter, I would bring it into the house where it can keep warm. But then hopefully in the summer, it can be out and enjoying the hot temperatures that the greenhouse will generate. So that's a pretty unusual bonus seed for this month, the month of May. But maybe some of you would like to join me in having a go at growing a bird of paradise. Now you might remember that last year when we were in Turkey, we did a whole garden tour and everything was in flower and there were loads of fruits. There were all the palm tree fruits, and that meant that there were bats everywhere, and it was quite an incredible sight. Now this year, because it's much earlier in the season, there isn't much in flower other than the bird of paradise. There are zinnias everywhere, and I'm hoping that one will come into flower before we leave. But the kitchen garden has been planted up. So here we have some rows of pepper plants. So I think from last year they were peppers rather than chilies. And then we watched them stake all the tomatoes just a couple of days ago. And these tomatoes are looking fabulous already. In fact, I can see a teeny tiny tomato already coming on one of the plants. We also have aubergines in this bed. And then there's mint and there's melons and, basil in this one. Now last year there were bananas on the banana trees, but this year they're just in flower, and actually the flower on these is very similar to the bird of paradise. So those were my 8 seeds to sow in May, plus a pretty special bonus. Now I'm going to enjoy the rest of my holiday, but next week I'll see you back in the garden and the allotment. Take care.